So, good afternoon, everyone. We will start in 2 minutes. So we're just giving other people an opportunity to join before we start.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning or good evening, depending on your time zone. My name is Dr. Kwame Ahiabano from Knowledge Innovation and the Ghana AI Summit. I'm going to moderate today's session. So, without much ado, can you drop the location that you are reaching us from this afternoon or whatever your time zone is? In the chat, yes. Let's hear from you. Are we here? Please drop your location or say good afternoon or your time. Yes, okay. It's happening now. Let's interact, please.
All right, no problem. Good afternoon.
In the chat. Oh,
Okay.
okay. Yeah. Wonderful. We have people reaching us from all over the country. Yeah. Okay, we are planning to start soon, but we want to hear from you. So let's do our first poll. Can you see the question? If yes, please start giving us your answer. Yes, I can see some answers. Let's interact. Again, the question, the poll is that you make use of AI in your university or institution? Okay, so this is the poll and this is the results. I'm going to launch the second poll, then we can get started, yes. Okay, this is an interesting one. Do you think AI will replace human educators in universities? Let's go. Welcome if you just joined us to this session. We are taking the poll. I want to hear from you about if AI can replace human educators in universities.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Okay. So I'm saying that the answer is that humans are going to win. So without much ado, I want to welcome you all to today's session. I have the privilege of introducing to you our presenter, who is Dr. Emmanuel Nartey. You can see his qualifications a lot, and that tells you that we have the right person with the right experience and the qualification to take us through this important subject matter, how we can leverage AI in improving the quality of higher learning in our educational institutions. So without much ado, I want to hand over to Dr. Nartey, who now is an associate prof. So congrats on that. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you. And thanks to Dr. Kwame for the introduction and the preliminary questions. It's quite interesting that all the audience and understand that AI is not here to replace human, which I do share that view as well. And also it's a privilege and honor to have this discussion with all of you and also to work collaboratively with Dr. Kwame and as well as knowledge and innovation. So these particular sessions that we are going to have is to understand in terms of when we talk about AI in teaching and learning, what are some of the strategical parameters that we can put in line with policy to ensure that the benefit of AI is reaped at university. So in other words, we do not see AI as detriment or replacement of humans, but one which can be termed as a coexistence. So this is very, very important in terms of our understanding. So with this particular discussion we are going to have will focus on the practical application of AI in terms of how does AI work in academia? How do we use it ethically, effectively in academia? What are some of the ethical parameters that we can put together as academics, as an institution to ensure that AI serve its purpose and at the same time developing the digital literacy of our students to meet the future demand of the workforce? It's very, very important. And also there are legal parameters that we should also recognize because when we are talking about data, AI, we are talking about data, right? So what are the policies that we can put together to protect individuals when we decided that, okay, now the evolution has taken place and there's nothing we can do about it. How do we put these safeguard parameters in order to ensure that the system we are deploying is effective and efficient and is ethically guided. So this is what it's going to be about. I know Dr. Kwame is looking at the chat. So what I would like you to do is to look at these questions and put it in the chat, because it will also inform our discussion. And if you have any question as well, put it in the chat, and Dr. Kwame will interrupt with me, and then I will attempt to address the question. So what I would like you to do for first thing is put this in your chat. The answers, which I knew it would be quite interesting. Will you trust an AI system to grade your student essay? Can you answer either yes or no? Okay, so that we can start thinking about when we're talking about ethical application of AI, what does it involve? And then also in the same case as well, look at the idea of ChatGPT and consider, for example, students using ChatGPT to write part of their essay. Will you accept it, or will you say that this infringe academic standard, therefore it's academic misconduct because it affects academic integrity? Put also your answer in the chat. And the other part I would like you to put in the chat as well is, how will university regulate the use of generative AI by student and staff? Okay, so this is the first part. And the second part is a reflection that I would like you to look at as well, because it gets you start thinking about, when we are talking about AI, how do we use it? Okay, and when we are talking about AI, do we have a preconceived idea about what it is? So what I mean by that is, if we talk about ChatGPT, for example, do you have a preconceived idea about ChatGPT because of what other people are saying? Or are you approaching it with a broad and open mind and trying to understand the whole operational system and benefit and limitation of ChatGPT? So this is more about reflection, and it to help guide our discussion. So Doc, if you could look at the chart and then highlight some of the important answers going forward, then I will incorporate it in the discussion. So I will start. Yeah, thank you. So I'll start by looking at when we talk about AI strategy. This is a concept that I coined in one of my books, which I call the guiding principle of using generative AI in teaching and learning. And it set out a clear guidance. So in my mind, when I was thinking, writing, I was thinking about, the evolution has taken place. Humanity cannot do anything about it. It will only get better and stronger, and to get to a point that it has to be coexistent. And so, what are some of the way we could think about integrating it into academia? Okay, that we also ensure that it promotes innovation and it help enhance student experience. So I came up with 4 fundamental themes, which I think when it's implemented, it will ensure effective and ethical use of AI. So the first theme is ethical framework. Okay, and I thought ethical framework is very, very important in terms of AI strategy. Okay, so how do we ensure that we have a good ethical framework to safeguard the deployment of AI in higher education institutions? And when you look at this ethical framework, I'm not only looking at it in the point of academic integrity. No, I'm looking at it in the point of promoting fairness and inclusivity. And that means that if AI is going to be deployed as an efficient enhancement tool in HEI, it is very important that we ensure that it's used fairly and inclusively. And what that means is students from low socioeconomic backgrounds, for example, who cannot afford the paid version of either ChatGPT, Copilot, or Gemini, the institution has a system in place to ensure that student from low socioeconomic background has access to this. So that's the first part. The second part is to ensure there is transparency and there is accountability. Accountability in the sense that, how is the AI is being used, who is responsible, and also who is responsible to ensure that the data that is being used is inclusive data and it does not perpetuate historical data that has marginalized individual from certain backgrounds. So these are very, very important. And transparency is also one of the ethical frameworks. So when we deploy AI in higher education institutions, we need to ensure that there is a transparency in terms of how it is used. Okay. And what that means is that we could have a clear guiding principle in terms of how AI students should use AI. So one of the principles could be that if it's used in assessment, you need to declare it and you need to explain where you have used it and how you have used it, right? So the first theme is the ethical framework. And the other theme, which I also found during my doing the research and also my presentation in the UK, that there is an issue to do with preconceived idea of AI and also limitation in terms of knowledge and understanding. So the second theme focus on development. How do we develop our fellow academics to understand the use of AI and to understand also its limitation? Because if you cannot use it, you do not know the limitation. And if you cannot use it or have not tried it, and try to understand it, you haven't got the knowledge in order to understand, how it works in practice. So the second theme focus on we need to train staff. We need resources that focus on how AI is being used, how it's being deployed, what are the limitations, what are the ethical parameters, how the data are being gathered, what data are being used. We need the resources for staff to be trained on it to understand it. As AI is evolving and cannot, and I mean this, cannot be separated from the mode of operation in society any longer. We as HEI need to encourage the adoption of generative AI tools. That means that this adoption also have to be done in a framework that ensure that academic integrity is protected, at the same time student experience and student engagement is enhanced. Okay. And HEI as an institution also need to ensure that they have built in capacity into their tuition strategy. Okay, and this means that there has to be an innovative way in terms of delivering teaching pedagogical strategy. There has to be an innovation in terms of how we write our assessment. There has to be an innovation in terms of how we align our employability strategy in the curriculum development as well. Okay. Then there is other part at some point, I have to move fast because we only have an hour, and then there can be a follow-up after. Then we have the policy aspect as well. And this is one, and up to date, I might say that most HEI haven't got a clear defined policy in terms of how AI should be used at the institution. And one of the strategy is to make sure that there is a clear policy guidance for staff and students and institutional wide in terms of how AI should be used. Also, there has to be a safeguard policy, and this safeguard policy means that there has to be a way where privacy and security of the data is protected, because you are dealing with student data and you are also dealing with university data. So there has to be that. And the other part I developed was every university has their own educational values. And for me, it is very, very important that this educational value is directly linked and correlated with the deployment of AI. Okay, so if you're, for example, as an institution, your educational value is to promote creativity, innovation of knowledge, and inclusivity, you need to ensure that that is also aligned with the deployment of AI through your policy and guidance that you have written for both staff and students. And the final aspect is to look at student engagement. Okay, so we need to also which stem from the other three themes. So the final part is just bringing all the three themes together. So we need to look at educating students on both the limitation and the benefit of AI. And that stems from the knowledge that you give to the student, that stems from the transparency and accountability that you also give to the student. They need to know this. And through this, you'll be able to foster responsible and effective use of AI, right? And then the last part is you have to encourage collaboration and exploration within the student spectrum. And what you are trying to do with the fourth team is not to discourage the use of it, but to encourage the use of it. But at the same time, you have a defined, clear understanding of how this is deployed. And what that means is that at each stage, you actually have education embedded in the student experience and the use of AI, right? So what that means is you develop their knowledge, which is very important, and their knowledge and awareness is also stem from basically their understanding of the limitation and the benefit of it. So that means that if they are using AI, right, they do understand the limitation of it. So effectively, these are the four theme that I discussed in the book that I wanted to share with you, which is, I think, is very important because it formed the fundamental base of how we could deploy this instrument in higher education institution. And if we are able to do this, then higher education institution will be in touch with innovation. And at the same time, they will be able to develop the digital literacy of their students. Okay, so I'll move on to the next slide. By the way, I'm in the University of Ghana and there is a program going on and they're having lunch. So bear in mind if you hear noise flying around. Have I got any question in the chat that need my urgent attention? Dr. Kwame?
No, please.
Okay, thank you. So then when you look at the four themes and you pick each themes and try to demystify it, you will find out that each teams have different variables that we as an HEI or as academic need to pay attention to. So when we look at the ethical framework, we need to understand the point where we question the limitation of the AI. And one of the points to understand is the bias that is created. And this is quite worse in the global south because the data that are being run is based on historical data, and that create bias because it's publication that has been written in the past 50 or 60 years does undermine certain principles in society that ensure inclusivity, right? And the large data model might be using some of this information. So if you are going to deploy it and use it as a tool, you need to understand this bias that exists, this historical bias that exists in data, and then you can address those biases, okay? And that means that one of the proposals that I thought the education institution could do is to look at how these algorithms and data set are trained, okay, and look at how they are designed before they deploy them in an institution, in institutional. What I mean by that is institutional wide use, okay. Because what you will find is that if you understand how the algorithm and the data set work, then you will know the demographic of your student, and you also know that deploying it by using historical data may not actually give the accurate prediction and personal learning trajectory for each student, right? So in this case, then the use of it may violate ethical principle and social cohesion. So you need to then think about an alternate way to deal with it, and for which that will mean that means you may invest in research in terms of looking at the inclusivity aspect, and you may look at how to enhance those data. Because when you look at the Western world, individual writing these data are predominantly white, privileged background, and unconsciously the design of the data perpetrated these views that they have, right? And we are using this system, so we need to understand that. Okay. And one of the example that I put is facial recognition system, where the way the system is structured, which it has, I might also say that it has got better, that it didn't recognize people from dark tone colors, right? And this is because it is being based on certain data in the previous past. So one of the ethical framework is very important for us to be aware of is the bias that is created, that is ingrained in the system. It is not on purpose, but because it is data set and that's what the system is using, we need to be aware of that, because if you're aware of this bias, then you will be able to mitigate it, and you'll be able to also advise your student in terms of what conceptual mindset that they need to adopt when they are using it, whether in their assessment or whether in their research or summarizing the data from maybe 50 or 60 years ago. They will understand the way it is used. And then the second, there's the first theme as well. When you break it down, you will look at the fairness aspect of using AI in higher education. Okay, and I did talk about we need to ensure, okay, that the policy that we create are in conjunction with the students who are in a disadvantaged position, and also we ensure that any system that we design and we create does not exclude individuals. Okay, so for example, if you are going to use AI in assessment, make sure that everyone has access to that so that the marginalized student may not struggle. So there has to be a fairness and equitable usage of the system, and this also falls under the ethical principle. Then when you outline this, the other part is to think about, so how do you mitigate bias, right? Okay, and it means that as an institution, you need to be able to have a constant audit of the data set that you are using, right? You need to ensure that the data set that you are using is very inclusive, is as an equal representation of cultures, different demographic, okay? And it also has an interdisciplinary body. So you could call it in this part, I'm talking about high level institutional staff. You could have an AI review body, okay? Because this is going to be big. I will be blunt with you. This is going to be something big, and it's like a storm that will take over in the next 20 years, right? Even not even 20 years, 10 years from now. So it will be very important for HEI should think now about having a sort of a department that focus on ethical uses of AI and how it is effectively integrated in higher education. So this has to be done in collaboration with different departments at the institutions. Then the other part I also talk about is looking at equity, okay, because it's very, very important. And for us, this means that when we are deploying this system in terms of pedagogical style, right, it has to be created in such a way that it meets the diverse need of all the students, right? So that's what it means. And it means that if you are going to deploy this system, it needs to recognize the uniqueness and the personalized learning need of each student. So if you, for example, you plan to create a chat box to advise, to give a 24 hours advice to a student, or you're going to create a system that helps to personalize career trajectory of the student, then it has to recognize the diverse needs of each of those students. Okay, so that means that the ethical frameworks must be reflective. It has to be intersectional. It has to take into consideration gender, disability, class, and all those important issues that create gaps in society in terms of social class. It has to be taken into consideration to ensure that there is equity in our teaching and pedagogical styles. Okay. equity in this sense also that I'm discussing means ensuring that there is equitable access and benefit for using AI across all student demographics, right? And what I mean by that is, for example, if you have a disabled student, there has to be equitable access in terms of how to use generative AI. If a student is coming from a Black or Asian background, there has to be an equitable access. So what you are trying to do here is to build personalized learning experience for the student that ensure that the student has the capacity and the empowerment to excel within their own aspirations. So this is very, very important in terms of the ethics side. Now, in, in terms of addressing the implementation, I'm jumping a bit further ahead because we have spent about 30 minutes already. So in terms of putting this in context, there has to be a way where we look at how we implement it in practice, because it's always good to have a theoretical framework. The final question in terms of theoretical framework and strategy is its implementation in practice, right? So I draw for this particular presentation, I draw inspiration from the book that I wrote. And from this book, I developed 5 main components in terms of how we could implement generative AI in higher education institution. And at the same time, we address the issue of bias and fairness. Okay, so the first part I talked about is governance and ethical oversight. Okay, and this is very, very important because it serves as a safeguard mechanism in terms of how we deploy AI in higher education institutions. So I set out steps in terms of how to do it. Okay, and uh, at the institutional level, the first thing we have to do is to ensure that we have some sort of working groups that look at how AI could be deployed. And I know in the United Kingdom there are some big institution has what they call the AI ethics committee, who basically oversee what is happening in terms of AI and how to deploy it, and they share knowledge in terms of the effective way to do this. Okay, and this committee includes staff, include diversity and equality representative, and include people from different backgrounds. And these help shape the implementation of AI because you have a diversity views, and that within this context, they are able to assess the impact of the system before it is being deployed in academic setting. Okay, and where there is disparity in terms of the data and how the system will be deployed, they always have the overview to ensure that the issue of fairness and equity and bias is addressed, because there are individuals from different bodies. Okay. The second aspect I talk about, which is also part of how to ensure there is this fairness and the bias is addressed, is looking at inclusive data and model practice. Okay. Now, for institution, before you deploy AI to either become the personal avatar for the student or tutor, personal tutor for the student, then the institution needs to basically do an audit to assess the data set. Okay. And this is very, very important because it will ensure that the data set that the system is using to inform or advise the student is inclusive. Okay. And within this data set, also, you need to ensure that it recognizes diversity, it recognizes different dialect, different mode of speech, different social structures, and different culture. You need to ensure that it has this embedded in it. Otherwise, it should not be effective in terms of deployment and combating bias and ensure there's equitable access to the system. Okay, and this can be done with collaboration with different groups, collaboration with these different researchers to look at the data design in order to advise the institution on how they could deploy AI. The last part is not the last part, actually. I think I got two more. It's 5 set of governance principle. The third one look at student-centered, okay, which is important. Okay, sometimes when we are talking about HEI, we talk about academic integrity, we talk about student not producing work, student not referencing now, but we need to talk about the student experience and the student focus, because education is a form of a teamwork. So it's not like the top-down approach. It's the top coming down and the down going up and meeting in the middle. That is what effective education is. So we need to ensure that before we deploy AI, it is capable to meet the need of all students. And for me, in my thinking, the most important is not the privileged student, but is the one who historically they are marginalized in terms of universities. And what I mean by that is maybe you have a student who is the first person to go to university in their family, right? Which is the first generation, or you have a student who is coming from certain socioeconomic background who are being perceived as not being, I need to be politically correct, who are perceived, okay, anyway, but a student from certain background where society have always perceived that they will be a dropout, or they will be the first person to fail their assessment, for example, or they will be the first person not to turn up to lectures. You need to have a system, that ensure that this historical marginalized issue is not perpetrated, but actually encourage and empower these individuals to engage. Okay. And if we are going to use it as personalized education system, then we also need to make sure that the issue of customization, and that means, personalized education. And I would confess that in my theoretical framework, I believe there will be a personalized education system as we move through the wave. So that means that we need to start thinking, what does personalized education means in technological world, right? So if you're going to do that, then you need to reflect on the different learning style and accessibility. So you could have a visual impaired person. Now, if you have a visual impaired person studying in your university, how do you ensure that they have been able to have access to technology, and also they have effective use of it? So you have to take all those into consideration, and ultimately also within this framework, you need to be able to allow the student to have a right to either be a participant and use AI in a good way, or they could decide that I do not need it. I will go the traditional way and think for myself. Well, when you use AI, you still think for yourself, but I mean, basically to do everything from A to B, right? Not to use it as an enhancement support system. Okay. And ultimately, the important is that we need to be able to empower students to have the choices, the rationale, and also to be able to understand and question the output of AI, so that they may develop their own understanding of how it is used. The fourth governance principle that I coined is the professional development and ethical training, which I think is very important. And it's not just in the Western world. You will meet a lot of colleagues who already have a preconceived idea about, what it means, but they have not even studied it or spent the time to understand how it works in practice. They just have a preconceived idea, so they enforce those preconceived ideas, right? This stems from lack of knowledge and understanding of how AI works. So for higher education institution, is very, very important to ensure that we equip our faculty and staff. We equip them in terms of training, and also understanding how and understanding what the limitations are, when we are deploying these tools, because if they have knowledge and understanding of it, then they will be able to identify what are the needs of their student and where they can deploy it. And then that means that there has to be a training program for our colleagues. There also has to be a scenario-based workshop, right, where you create a real-world scenario and colleagues can have hands-on practice about how it works and how it works and what are the challenges they face. I also recommend that there is a resource hub which may have hundreds of case studies and template policies where colleagues can engage with, and also from this, colleagues can formulate their own knowledge and understanding of how the system works. And the 5 is very, very important because in any technological deployment, I believe there has to be monitoring, feedback, accountability mechanism. So that means that to ensure that AI is effective and ethically used, then there has to be a continuous evaluation. Okay, and this continuous evaluation is to ensure that there is fairness in terms of deployment and there is institutional equitable achievement. And what that means that when you need to align your AI deployment policy with teaching values and institutional values so that you ensure equity is achieved. So the way to do that, you may have a feedback loop, or you may have annual equity and AI reports, or you can choose to go on approving or renewing the tools by assessing how the fairness matrix and evaluation work. So that is the governance framework. If you like to deploy your AI in such a way that in its implementation, you ensure that the issue of bias, equity, and fairness is addressed. And I have summarized this in a table in a simplified way that you have the governance on the left side, and then you have the objective and what the output will be. Okay. Do I have any questions before we move on? I don't think I'll finish all the slides because we only have an hour left, but I'm happy
Okay,
to
so
take any
maybe,
question.
Prof,
Yeah,
let's do a poll quickly. As a
yeah,
quick break, then we can hear. So let me
yeah.
launch the poll.
Okay.
Okay, so the question is related to how AI literacy is integrated into your curriculum.
Okay. So am I picking this question up?
No, I'm just asking the group here to.
Okay. It's quite
Okay, there's a hand
interesting.
up.
Okay.
You want to unmute and ask your question, please, quickly. Confidence.
Confidence. Okay, thank you very much. I am following your training. I want to ask, in this context, what do you mean?
Confidence. Your line is very, very faint. Can you type your question, please?
Yeah.
Okay, it's faint. Okay.
If you can just type it in the chat, we'll pick it up.
Yeah, because the line is faint. Thank you. So I think like this question is quite interesting, and almost 64% of our participants are saying that, even that is going up, are saying that actually they are saying that AI literacy is not integrated into the curriculum, which is quite worrying. I'll give you one example. In the UK now.
Prof, just before then, I think Ishmael, your hand is up. If you can ask your question, please.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Yeah, so Prof, I would just like to thank you. But my question is that how are we supporting this AI integration into our educational system here in Africa, particularly Ghana? Because it is like the traditional teaching way is always good for them. So how are you advising them to accept this AI integration into our educational system?
Yeah, this is a very good and interesting question. Thank you. Whoa.
So Prof, may I suggest that we have 5 minutes to run up your presentation, then we go straight into the question. So I've taken note of these questions.
Okay.
So if I just conclude in 5 minutes, then we can interact.
Yeah, I think I have about 20 slides left.
Yeah, but just do it in 5 minutes for us.
Yeah. So basically, so the reason why I get drawn so much into this, because I feel AI has the potential to reduce the socioeconomic barriers, and also to ensure that there is an inclusive education approach and the inclusive pedagogical way of teaching our students. So this is my aspiration, and this is what I hope to achieve, and that's why I am passionate about this. So I would jump this because these are just an examples where you could deploy example in terms of how you could deploy AI in your teaching and learning. I'm trying to think what we could do. I could discuss. Right. Okay, so I'll talk about this. So if you are going to implement AI in your institution, I think your policy document has to be a living document. And this policy document has to include assessment regulation. And this assessment regulation has to also include module handbook. And what that means is that the AI is embedded in the module handbook, and you also need to train your staff and student on how to use it, and ensure that the students understand the policy dimension of using generative AI. You need to ensure that there is monitoring and implementation and feedback loop in terms of how the system works. And now, when I talk about policy and at module level and staff level, for module leaders and program leaders, they have to ensure that this policy is embedded in their module handbook. And when they write assessment, the assessment has to be accompanied with an AI guidelines that dictate what the student can do in terms of using the AI and what they cannot use. So for example, there could be a text to say that they can use it to improve their English and correct all grammatical errors and typo. Okay, there could be a session which talks about using it for research and summary information. Okay, so you can include this policy in all your module handbook and also guidance. Okay, can you all hear me?
Sir, we can hear you.
Okay, good. So I will hold it there, and I will ensure this slide is available for everyone else to use to go over, because the rest of the chat is quite long. And then let's have a meaningful conversation about your questions, and I'll attempt to address them if I can. So back to you, Dr. Kwame.
Yes, so you can take the question that was asked before.
Yeah, I think that from my point of view, I would say is either you innovate or you perish, and that is one of the things. And now we have come to a phase where student experience and learning requires personalized learning, and it requires the expert to understand that each student is unique and is part of the whole, but has its own distinctive approach. And what that means is that you cannot assume that when you deliver a lecture to 100 students or have 25 people in a seminar, automatically they should accumulate and digest your information. No, it doesn't work like that. And this requires us as an expert to question ourselves in terms of, are we following a teaching model that only benefits the top tiers, or do we need to have a teaching model that ensures there is a personalized approach right? This is where the AI comes in. And I want to strongly advise as especially in Africa, is for us to identify that we need to respect the uniqueness of our students. That is number one. And we also need to understand that each student learning style is varies from different approaches, right? And by doing that, we need to then ask ourselves, where can we use technology and deploy it to help us empower these students so that they will be able to digest information easily, right? And this is where I would advise that we need to start integrating it into our teaching pedagogical strategy. I'm not saying that deploy AI, and then without any parameter or safeguard, but you can use it. So we need to move away from the traditional approach. The Western world is ahead. I know South Africa is also ahead of this, right? So we need to start thinking.
Hello, Prof. Okay, I think we can hear Prof. Okay, let's do a poll whilst we can. Are you back, Prof?
I think he has a network. He dropped.
Okay. So let's do this poll now. So the question is that is AI transforming academic research and publishing? Whilst we get Prof back on. Can we see the poll?
Yeah, we can see the poll, but we are not able to write.
You can answer it?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Because there's
Okay, so let me, I'm not sure.
And I'm able to write from here, please.
Yeah, so just answer that. I'm not sure why the others cannot answer.
no. When you click on the writing, the account, this is a response. The account owner and the host will be able to see who you are, the contact information, if you are logged in or you provide it, and your reasons or your response, and can share them with apps and others. So that's where the problem is coming from. Maybe
Okay,
you don't have the app
do
there.
so, yeah.
You don't have the app to support
Okay, that's
that.
fine. Yeah, the persons can answer. It's fine. So let me give us some few seconds now. Launch the second poll whilst we are trying to get Prof to come back online.
Okay.
Can you all hear me? I'm back online.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm back online. The Zoom just crashed. I don't know why.
Okay, that's fine. So it's good that you're back. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had a question that I want to pose. Yeah. So I think the question is that in terms of academic writing or publishing, how do you balance or report what content was written by AI and what is by human? So if you have a research or a paper you're putting in, and you ask a question to AI, write a research about a chat about AI applications in higher education. We give you the whole content and you revise it. Is that your paper or AI paper? And how do you report it?
So I wouldn't advise to do that because there is something about presenting a paper which is from your own research, and reading that paper, we can know whether you wrote that paper yourself or is written by AI. Because anytime someone produces a piece of work from their own research, you can sense the human tone in the writing. Okay, so what you could use the AI to do is either if you have to review, for example, 25 articles, right? And provide a summary discussion on each one of them. you can give all these 25 articles to AI to give you a summary of the argument, and then you use this summary to discuss, to write the point, to improve the point that you are trying to discuss. But if you ask it to produce an article, it will not produce it to the human standard. Okay, and that that is not what the system is used for. The system is used to help you improve certain aspect of your writing, which could be to correct some of the grammatical errors, or to help you to improve certain idea that you wanted to put into context. So you need to always have the human oversight and have the human control over what you are doing, but not to say, not to tell the system, to write the assessment for you. I have reviewed a few papers in the past, which I know that it was written by AI. It's just because the human aspect is missing, and you cannot take the human reason out of AI and expect experts who are in the field not to recognize it. So I will strongly advise that it is not the best way to use it.
Thanks for that. Have a hand up, Ishmael.
Yeah.
Can you go? So we are now at question time. So if you have a questions, a comment, a contribution, raise your hand up and we want to hear from you. So let's interact. Ishmael.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Doc. Now, if I heard from the professor, he says that he observed or he examined some papers and realized that there's no human, or the human tone is missing. Now, before I try to do or publish something or an article, I'll put together the ideas that I've collected from the previous or from the papers, and then put it in the ChatGPT or to the AI to summarize or to provide what I want from that. Now, if I do that and I realize that no, this is what I want from the AI perspective or from the article perspective, how will that summarize to you, or at the end, that there is no human tone in it?
Because what makes human is we are able to rationalize things with our emotion. Okay, so if you are writing about a concept which you are passionate about and you wanted to address some social injustice that is happening, you have the emotional context in it. So you can see the correlation there, and this is very, very important. Okay, so when you use the AI to summarize the view, or you basically write, first of all, you can write the concept yourself or the argument. You can present the argument yourself, right? And then ask the AI to improve on that argument, and you can prompt it to take out all the grammatical mistake and write it to the highest academic standards. When you do that and you read the work, you will see that your own voice is still present in the work, right? But if you ask the AI to write it, trust me, your voice will not be present in that work. So the important part is when you gather the idea, you should write your argument and then ask for the system to refine it, okay? And I might also say that since the ChatGPT came to life, the quality of articles being submitted from the global south, the English tone is quite very high and is of a higher standard. And what that means that the rejection rate is low now. Because if you want to publish, for example, in Cambridge University Journal of Transnational Environmental Law, they have certain standard that you have to meet, right? So papers who are using AI to improve their English and academic discourse are getting the recognition and acceptance level. So you can't use it ethically, but but using it to in a way of trying to beat the system, experts who are really in the field and understand what they are doing, they will always figure it out and reject the paper.
All right. So one more. So does
Ishmael,
AI make
let's give the
somebody?
chance to somebody else, so please.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thanks. So do you have any other question? If not, we had a question that came that Prof, in a lot of universities and tertiary institutions in Ghana, there are a number of problems, including accommodation, even lack of internet access. So how do we justify or try to stimulate or encourage investment in AI, given that there's a lot of constraints?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question, and I see the deployment of technology and the resolving of the social issue goes hand in hand. Okay, so you have to approach this issue in a holistic way. And sorry, there's a noise. There's a noise at the background. So if you can hear noise, people are having lunch and they are talking. So my apologies. But what I'm trying to say is that it goes hand in hand, right? You cannot have a good accommodation, but at the same time, um, you are not able to develop effective pedagogical education that help the student to develop their knowledge and go out to contribute to the world, right? So technology investment is not distinctive from the societal challenges that we face. And in fact, technology will help us to be efficient and improve our capability, thereby helping us to address the societal challenges. So my answer to this question is to approach the issue in a holistic way. You can't do without technology. You also need the issue you need to address the issue of accommodation and also the internet issue. So there has to be investment in those areas. And if you treat them distinctively, you would find that the student experience and the knowledge delivery will be lacking behind. And at the moment, what we always do is to try to see each issue as unimportant, but they are all interconnected and interdependent, and we have to see it within this context.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions, comments? The floor is open. You can raise your hand or just unmute and let's hear from you. Questions, please, or you can type it. Okay, there's a question here. You want to take it, yes?
Yeah. So Christoph, a teacher trainee, okay, College of Education. So I advise you prompt AI to get an overview of what you are looking for before you make your argument. No, it's the other opposite. But if you are asking me a question in regards to producing teaching materials for your student, then I would say yes, you can use the AI to prompt. You can prompt the AI on whatever topic that you wanted to develop for the students. So you can use it, for example, if you are doing something in English literature, ask the AI to develop an interactive English literature activities for my students. So if it's 10 years, 15, 16, and it will be able to design good interactive activity for you to review, and then you can use it in your assessment, not in your assessment, in your teaching. So in that context, yes, if you have all your curriculum syllabus, that things that you need to cover, and you are struggling
Yes.
to come up with a concept or an interactive activities, just go there, prompt the system, and ask the system to develop these interactive activities for you for this particular age group, and I need to do it. So that is another way to do that, especially if also you haven't got time, to plan all your lessons, because most teachers I talk to plan their lesson on the weekends, and no one pays you on the weekend, right? So you can use it as a tool to plan your assessments, and not your assessment. It's been a long day. You can use it as a tool to plan your activities, your teaching activities, and that saves you a lot of time as well.
Wonderful. Do you have any more questions? We have gotten to the top of the hour. If not, we take final comments from Prof.
Yes, please. I have one question. Just a follow-up
go
on
ahead. Yes.
the very first one that he answered. So in the process where you develop your research paper and then you give it to an AI tool to how do I say it?
Review
make some corrections, and then it returns the article back to you. If you're a student and then you submit such an article, maybe to your supervisor, wouldn't it come out as an AI product?
Right. So
because then you have written it, given it to, okay.
Yeah, so I'll teach you what to do. So, you know, when you have your login, right, and you create your own idea, assuming you've written the paper yourself, right? Is that what you are saying, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
so
please.
After you put it on, you have put it through the system, and the system has basically refined the languages for you and then correct all the typos, right? It is your work. You just need to declare it that you have used it to correct all the grammars and typo in your work. So you just declare that in your article that this is what you have used it for. Then you need to go back to your login, right? Go to your login and go to your settings and delete that particular data. So once you delete that particular data, it will not flag in any Turnitin report.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes.
And once you declare it, right, nobody should hold you, should say that you are cheating because you didn't use it to cheat, right? And if they try to say you cheat, I would advise you to you know, flex your muscles and take them to the wire, because that's not cheating. You just use it as a tool to improve your English, as people use Grammarly, for example.
Okay.
But if you want to get rid of the data, you need to go inside and then delete it yourself.
Right, thank you.
Okay, so what I would say is that we will leave this floor open for future dialogue, and if anyone wanted to contact us and have further question, we can address it. And also we can share the slides, because there's almost 20 slides that I have not gone through, which have examples that could be useful as well. But what I would say is the main point here is we have to acknowledge, okay, we need to be true with ourselves that AI and technology has arrived, and the next phase of the human evolution has arrived. So what do we do with it? Do we flow with the current and work with it, or do we swim against it and get left behind? This is the question that we need to ask and be honest with ourselves as an institution. The second part is also, how do we integrate it effectively, ensure that it doesn't undermine academic integrity, but rather promote student experience, knowledge creation, and innovation? This is another question that we need to ask ourselves. The final part I will talk about, we need to always ensure that equity and fairness, it is at the core of any system that we deploy, because ultimately this is what we are trying to do. We are trying to empower the future generation to think for themselves and go out there and contribute to the world. Therefore, we cannot create a system that is deployed and then the poor person who cannot afford student accommodation is being left behind again. These also, we need to start to prevent it. That means that we need to be strategic in terms of what we do. We need to also be strategic in terms of what policy we implement and how we work with students and also fellow academic, and use this effectively, because it is here. And I'm telling you, there's nothing anyone can do about it. It will just get better and better. So we need to start rethinking and moving away from the traditional pedagogical style and become more innovative, where we see teaching and technology as one unity rather than distinctive parts. Okay, so thank you very much for your time, and we will continue this discussion in another time.
Okay, thanks very much, Prof, for this insightful presentation. We've added to the chat the WhatsApp group we have, which talks about AI in Ghana, so please feel free to join. we will share with you a summary of this presentation and also the slides. And also at this juncture, I want everybody to turn on your mic and or your camera, and let's clap, give a big clap to Prof for this insightful presentation. So let's look at you, or let's start.
Well, thank you.
I can't hear the clap. Let's all
Thank
clap.
you. Thank you. God bless you, Prof.
Thank you
very much.
God bless you.
Thank you, everyone. Take
You
care.
hope to hear you again.
Soon you will. Don't worry.
God
Okay.
bless you.
Okay. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
All right,
Bye.
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 Bye.